What's up, everybody? We are going to be breaking down the UFC 284 main card today. And, I mean, this fight has been... We got to talk about what a good matchup this is. I mean, the only thing... And you're going to get this, though, anytime you move between weight classes. It's like the size difference is pretty pronounced, right? And I know that there's this whole background, and there is something to it, right? There is something to Volkanovski having played like rugby and weighed 200 plus pounds at one point in his life. Like, there is something to that, right? But Islam is like in the weigh-ins, Islam could probably fight at 170 and be comfortable there, right? He wouldn't be a big 170 pounder, but he could fight there and not look out of place, I believe, right? Whereas Volkanovski is making the trip up to 155, and it's like, man, you fought at 145 for a reason. That's where he performs really well. Not that he can't perform well at 155, but Islam's a big dude, right? So there's a lot of variables for Volkanovski to overcome in this fight, but this fight is an incredible matchup. I mean, if you're talking about just pure skill, if you think about what Volkanovski did to the Zombie, if you think about what Volkanovski did to Holloway in their last matchup, I mean, the way he escaped those submissions against Ortega, who is like one of the best. When he gets your neck, you don't get away, typically, right? And he got Volkanovski in a guillotine, he got him in a fucking triangle, and Volkanovski got out of both, right? Now, it's going to be different, though, I think, when somebody like Islam is on top of you, because his pressure is going to be different, right? He emphasizes a lot on cross-face pressure, right? And controlling things from top position and kind of making you make mistakes, right? He forces dilemmas on you. You hear guys like John Danaher and Gordon Ryan talk about this all the time, but he forces dilemmas on you. And that you make mistake, and then that's where he capitalizes on his submissions, right? He's very technically sound from the top. They have an incredible base. They're going to be very hard to sweep, I think, athletes like that with that Sambo background. But I do think that you got to work to get feet to hips and get back to your feet, right? The problem is, though, like when you extend your legs, a lot of the time, you see this all the time, like you'll extend your legs to push them away, and they'll immediately grab your legs and then use that as leverage to go back in while your body's extended, right? Like you see guys like Islam and Khabib hit that, where like guys will try to push away and they catch the ankle, they pull through, and while your body is extended out and there's a lot of space to move into like side control here, right? Because your legs are pushing away, your knees aren't in close to your chest, they can close the distance and get back. So I think like you almost have to, they just understand. And when I say they, I'm referring to people like Khabib and Islam. And I don't mean to like lump them all into the category. Islam is an animal himself, right? Like he is his own unique fighter. He has a very, very strong striking base. He does things fundamentally well, right? But they have a style on the ground in particular, the Sambo people and the people that come out of Khabib's camp, where they understand MMA grappling and they are specialists in MMA grappling. So they understand how to control you up against the cage. They understand how to, again, it's all about getting on top and staying on top. And one of the things that they do really well is wrestle with their legs. And that prevents guys from getting their hooks in and stuff, right? And being able to gain any sort of inside positioning. And that's why a lot of guys spend a lot of time in the bottom of side control or half guard, or, because once they get the half guard, you'll see that, like, if Islam gets there, will immediately put shoulder pressure into the person to keep them turning away, and that's where they set things up. So they have this, like, specialty. And when they're against the cage, he'll just go to a body lock and get your weight over top of your hands, make you carry yourself on your hands, right? If he's not able to get the takedown, like, you'll see his people, they have responses for every way that you can get back to your feet. So it's like really the avenue to success is kind of blocking those takedowns, or if you get taken down, maybe work to get back to your feet, but don't exert so much effort into it, because the problem is that they have great cardio and they're not tired being on top. So even if you're taking it off and trying to like take that round off and gather yourself, they're not getting tired because you're not putting up a strong defensive effort. It's a lot of things to overcome when you're grappling guys like this, but I think that what you have to do is you have to hold them at the end of your punches. And if there's one thing that Volkanovski does well, it's that. If you look at the way he fought Max Holloway, and I know, completely different style of fighter, but Max's striking is fucking good. And what Volkanovski is He's a rhythm buster, man. Like he has great technique, but Holloway's one of those guys who needs to get going, right? And when you see Volkanovski fighting him, he's just pop, 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 like tagging him with things and busting the rhythm of Max Holloway. Islam isn't such a rhythm fighter though, like that, right? Like he's kind of like very linear, like I'm running through you. I'm doing what I want to do. That's like his style, right? Like he kind of comes out, blitzes you, and tries to, like he comes straight down the pipe with his punches and kicks, right? Like everything's very straight, and he's trying to take you down, right? Does a good job of like controlling outside foot positioning, right? But like just does a good job everywhere on the feet, and that's what makes it tough. It's like he's good enough on the feet to give you problems there, and then he uses his striking to set up his takedown. So, man, I do think Volkanovski is the more technical striker in terms of he's going to have more in the toolbox. He's going to have more variety in his strikes. He's going to have better footwork than Islam. He's going to be able to move a little bit more, I think. He's going to look more comfortable there. But the problem is, can he keep him off of him, right? So it's going to be interesting to see. And, I mean, everybody talks, too, about the fact that Volkanovski is a little bit shorter and more compressed. And I'm telling you, like when you're grappling with someone, there is something to that. When their bodies aren't, like Charles Oliveira is very long, and yes, he's an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner, taking nothing away for him, but he's a completely different body type. It is harder to, like when I do jiu-jitsu, right? And it is sometimes very difficult to control somebody who is thicker like that, right? And if you look at instances of Khabib's fights, like where like Gleison Tibau, Khabib struggled a little bit, right? But the problem here too is that like Tibau's a big dude and Volkanovski's still undersized. I started with, usually I work my way from the bottom up, and we'll talk about the rest of the fights in that order, I think. But like I just kind of got caught on this one, and just, man, it's a great matchup. It's still I know that when you listen to me talk about it, it seems like I'm leaning towards Islam, and I am. I think that style is very hard to overcome. You know, Volkanovski does work with Craig Jones, and I think that Craig is very smart. He understands what these Sambo practitioners are trying to accomplish in there, and I think that they'll have defenses built up. But I just don't know if it's enough over the course of 5 rounds. The key to victory for Volk is to keep things at a distance and get things going with the hands. Mix the kicks in after you find success with your hands, right? Because if the kicks come early, Islam does a very good job at catching them. They can't be naked. But you'll see, man, that is like Volkanovski does not make mistakes on the feet very often, right? And I think that Islam's striking is a little bit more simplistic, even though it's diverse. Don't get me wrong, he can kick, but like I'm telling you, there's going to be layers to Volkanovski striking. If he can get the hands going and keep this fight at a distance and just kind of like prevent Islam from ever setting up the hands first and then stuffing the shots, you might see success out of, because that is something also that like Sambo practitioners chain wrestle well. Islam, no different. They chain wrestle well, but they also do a good job of setting up their takedowns with their hands first. Once your hands come up, they're immediately underneath, right? So Volkanovski has to be using angles to avoid the punches so that he can be prepared for the takedown coming, right? He has to basically take control of the striking, I think, and then force Islam, that if he's going to shoot naked shots that are telegraphed, because those are still hard to complete, right? Like Islam, in order to get a takedown against Volkanovski, Islam is going to have to catch Volkanovski like unaware, like getting his hands going up and not ready for the shot. Volkanovski always has to be anticipating the shot, and he has to be careful with his angles and stuff. He could win, man. He could win. He could, but it's a tall task to overcome. I think I lean Islam just for this reason, right? Anytime you're talking about a fight like this and you're trying to think about all the ways that a guy could overcome those problems, it's usually an indicator that the other guy's going to win, you know, like that you're trying to look for these reasons. And again, I would love, like, I don't root for people often in UFC fights. Like, to me, I just want to see how it plays out, honestly. Like, I'm a fan of most of the people, right? There's some, like, I don't know. I really don't, I genuinely don't care who wins most of the fights. But in this one, you do want to see Volkanovski win. You want to see the underdog come up, and you want to see if he can do it. And if anybody has the style to do it, it is Volkanovski, right? He's got everything. He's got everything that you need. He's again, maybe the best pound for pound fighter in the world. If he pulls this off tonight, no doubt he is. No doubt he is. But, you know, the size thing that comes into play in this one, I think. So Something to keep in mind. But let's go back down to the bottom of the main card now. So by the way, I'm taking Islam. I do think though that like Volkanovski is a world champion. He's gonna come well prepared. He might be worth a bet in this one, man. You know, if he can get, I don't know, he might be worth throwing a little bit of money down. Even though I do think Islam's gonna win, but I'm not rolling Volk out. I think I don't think it would be it would be a big upset, but it wouldn't be. I don't think the most. Like DC said, the biggest upset in UFC history. I don't think it's that, but it would be an impressive upset if Volkanovski can pull this off, and he would cement himself undoubtedly as the greatest pound for pound. So, big fight tonight, man, and a fucking great matchup again. Two guys that are really like in their prime. You know, it's rare that you see champions meet like this. You know, good fight. So, all right, let's see. Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield is going to open up the main card. And man, this fight has potential to be a banger, I think, because both guys are powerful, right? And I think the thing though that I'm leaning Jimmy Crute in this one. He's at home, right? And I think that he has a little bit more variety in his attack, and I think that he'll be able to set his takedowns up a little bit more effectively than Menifield will. Like I think that Crute will probably be able to stuff a lot of the takedown attempts coming from Menifield. Right, but the thing that he's got to watch out for is that big power. And you saw, Jimmy Crute in his fight against Anthony Smith really struggled against that jab. And man, Menifield doesn't really set the jab up too often though. Like you'll see him throw it out there, but he throws with big power a lot. So I think there are going to be opportunities for Crute to level change underneath. I think he'll be the one kind of controlling those grappling exchanges more often than not, right? You might see some success from Menifield. I mean, like if you look at the William Knight fight, he's just so explosive and strong that he is able to come up on top from certain positions and like reverse out of bad spots. And, but all in all, I think Crute is probably a little bit more technical there. And also, I know that Smith like kicked the leg out from Crute and like gave him that dead foot and everything in their fight, but Crute was really the one who was more successful with the leg kicks early in the fight, I thought. So, and you see that like historically throughout Crute's career, he does a really good job of throwing the leg kicks. So I think that could be a big difference maker in this fight. I think you're going to see Crute kind of eat up the legs of Menifield, and it will really take away some of that power that he usually comes out with, and then you'll see Crute be able to open up from there and maybe Crute is, though, you got to be careful. Like I said, like he got touched up by Anthony Smith with the jab. Crute is susceptible to getting hit, and he could get hit with some big shots in this one, and I think that's where Menifield could potentially turn things in his favor. But all in all, I think Crute is going to be able to, like I said, hold the range a little bit better. Those leg kicks, I think, will be a really big deal. They'll take some of the power away from Menifield, and then it'll allow Crute's game to open up. He can level change underneath. I just think he's going to be able to create more opportunities in this fight, and I think that's really what it boils down to, right? I think Crute has more options to create more opportunities against Menifield than Menifield does against him. Not that Menifield couldn't catch him with something, or maybe he does come out and he has improved in the striking, like not the striking necessarily, but the striking to grappling transitions, right, where you get the hands up, and maybe he can, I don't know. But all in all, from what I've seen so far, I like Crute in this one. Crute's I think he's like a minus 190 favorite. Let me look on DraftKings right now. But I think the odds on this one are pretty fair. If you guys are believers in Menifield, I think he was at like plus 160. Let me see if I can get logged in. I don't know. I think I might stay away from this line. Simply, by the way, I'm going to throw a little bit of money on Volkanovski, like I mentioned. But come on, fucking load. Here we go. Jimmy Crute minus 180. Menifield's plus 155. So I don't know. Kind of a tough line to bet, but like I said, I like Crute, but I don't know if the odds are there to throw money on him. Anyway, next fight is a heavyweight bout between Justin Tafa and Parker Porter. Man, I never know what to really make of fights like this, right? I think that when you look at the two guys, this is going to seem like critical, but like Parker Porter is not, and I hate making this criticism because he's in the UFC, he's fighting there, but like, and not that Justin Tafa's much better, but like he has a, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like Parker Porter is clearly not a heavyweight. Like he's too big, right? Like he has too much like going on. Like there's too much excess on him. And this is what I mean. Like, this is why I say this. And I don't mean to be critical. Like I said, he is a UFC athlete. He's obviously a very talented martial artist. He has good striking, right? But look at his fight against, who was, I think, Jailton Almeida. I mean, ragdolled. And Almeida isn't the biggest heavyweight in the world, but he is fucking sculpted like a Greek god. Like, if you're Parker Porter and you have that much excess body fat to lose, man, do you think you're going to beat Cyril Gane? Do you think you're going to beat Francis Ngannou? Do you think you're going to beat these people whose bodies are completely filled out and they generate a different type of power do you think you're going to compete for a heavyweight world championship? I mean, I don't think so. And I don't think that build is favorable to ever gaining a title in the UFC. Not today. Not anymore. Maybe back in the day, but now when you have somebody like Ngannou running and Jones is moving up, Stipe, even DC is like a little bit chubbier, I know, but he's built like, I met DC, he's built like a fucking brick shit house. Like, he's not sculpted, but man, he is fucking dense, right? Like, he is strong through his core. He wrestled his whole career. Like, you don't get that feeling when you look at Parker Porter. You feel like it's a lot of looseness on him, right? And it just doesn't, like, I can't see him. And, the body type doesn't always matter, but holy fuck. It kind of does a little bit. Like, look at the athletes that are competing at the elite levels of the heavyweight division right now, right? You're either a really, really big guy or you are, like, fucking jacked, like an Ngannou type figure, right? And I know Ngannou's not with the UFC right now because of the whole heavyweight, like, champion. Like, he didn't sign the contract for the, I don't know, to defend his heavyweight championship, blah, blah, blah. He's cut. But anyway, I don't know. I got sidetracked, but anyway, I'm going with TUF on this fight. I just think that he has that, like, cracking knockout power where he can put Porter out that Porter really, I don't think, has. And I think TUF is going to have a pretty good chin. I think that he's going to be, he has quick hands. He's good with the boxing. But again, he gives you that kind of Mark Hunt feel. And I don't know how to explain it. It's different. But like, Mark Hunt obviously had that success where he could just fucking one-punch KO guys. But I just don't know if you get that from Porter at a UFC level. So I'm going with TUF on this fight. I don't know. I know I kind of like, that was a little bit critical of him. But I'm just saying, man. I'm just being honest. Right? Next fight on the card is, I think I got the, let's see. I want to make sure I have this right. Yeah. This is a good fight. Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown. Man. Here's what I like about Della Maddalena that we've seen so far, right? I think that he has had a really good progression so far in the UFC where he's gotten a lot of different looks, right? Like, he came in against a guy who was, I mean, the kid cracked him with like one or two nice combos, but overall he really got to put his skills on display in his UFC debut. And you got to see how smooth he was with his boxing and everything, right? And then in his next fight, they put him up against, tough fight against Ramazan Ameev, and Ameev catches him in that deep. It was like, I can't remember if it was an anaconda or a darch, but it was fucking deep, right? And he got out of it and he dealt with it, and then he picked up the finish, right? He backed Ameev up against the cage, went to work with the boxing again. He'll rip the body, which is huge. A lot of guys don't do that enough. Madalena will. So, man, very talented. And when you watch him, the best word to describe him is smooth. He's fucking smooth, man. He's aggressive, too. He's not a fan of the glove touch, which, like, hey, I don't know how I feel about the glove touch, by the way. Like, I like it. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's like sportsmanship. But, like, I do understand the mentality that, like, we're in a fight right now. Like, shake hands after. You know what I mean? But, like, I don't know. I've competed in jiu-jitsu a couple times. I always shake hands before. So, like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think you'll see Madalena do a glove touch tonight, right? Just a little side note. But, you know, his fight, too, against Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert's kind of a long guy. Randy Brown's a really long guy, and he's got a really good right hand and shit, but, like, similar to Randy Brown just in the sense that he is a longer body type, and, man, Madalena, like, pieced him up. Like, his boxing is so fucking clean, man. He's just smooth. Like I said, that's the best word to describe him. But he's going up against Randy Brown. And Randy Brown is a guy who's fought some tough veterans so far, right? Francisco Trinaldo. He's, like I said, he's super long. And the problem, though, And I was thinking about this, like, if you're fighting a long guy, you have got to back him up against the cage and kind of keep his foot behind that black line. I think that's your key to success. If you don't do that, you're letting him play with all the space. And here's the big difference between like boxing and MMA, right? If you're a striker and you can move the taller opponent backwards up against the cage, if you're in boxing, you could like lean out over the ropes. I mean, even that famous clip where Muhammad Ali's like grabbing the turnbuckles and like dodging everything, right? Like, even if you do, like, you can't really do that in the UFC because there's a cage behind you. So you're like, if you're against the cage, you can go left down, right down, but you can't go back. So you lose a whole radius, like a 180-degree radius of escape routes with your head. And that's why a lot of the times when you see people who have power push the guy up against the cage, they really run into trouble. Because again, your pathways to, like, your only exits are down and to the side. Or you got to use your footwork to circle back into the center where you have more room. But your ability to move your head back there's nowhere you can go because the fence is a barrier. So you've taken away all of this head movement, right? And that's why you see guys be more successful there. That's why shots tend to be more accurate there, and you see guys get knocked out up against the cage a lot, right? That has to be the key for Madalena in this fight. You have to, and we've seen people be able to do this to Randy Brown because he does overextend with the striking sometimes. I think that I like Madalena in this fight, but when I was thinking about, like, I was like, I wonder what the odds are on this. I was like, Madalena is probably like a 150, 175 favorite. Man, Madalena is a fucking 315 favorite, and Randy Brown is a plus 260 underdog. Randy Brown is still a challenge. Randy Brown is still a high-level fighter. The only thing that makes me a little nervous about Brown is he has a little bit of showmanship, and I brought this up earlier, like with the glove touch. I meant to connect these points. Randy Brown has a little bit of like showmanship, and there's not really those moments of inactivity from Madalena, and I like that, right? Like, I like the fact that he just marches you down, and he's just like, it's a fight to him, right? Like, he's not going to be caring about being all showy, I don't think. Maybe something in Brown will bring it out of him, I don't know, but I think you're going to see Madalena fight, and that showmanship where you like drop your hands or shit like that, that makes me a little bit nervous. I think Madalena is really going to take it to Brown, and I like Madalena to win this fight. Don't get me wrong. But guys, Randy Brown, like his fights with Alex Oliveira, he has a fucking sharp right hand. He is long. If he can get that jab working and hold the range, Madalena still has to find a way to pressure him and not let him circle off the cage and control the... It's still a tall task. It's still a tall task. This is still a UFC fight. I had, like, when I was watching this, I was like, I had written on my thing, good fight. If Madalena comes out and blows through Randy Brown, you really know you got someone special on your hands. Like I said, I think Randy Brown is a talented fighter, and I'm kind of surprised the odds are as stacked as they are in favor of fucking Madalena. I think he's going to win, but I thought he would be like closer to minus 175-ish, that kind of range, right? But we'll see. We'll see. The co-main event is a featherweight interim title matchup between Josh Emmett and Yair Rodriguez. And this is a fucking fantastic fight too. This is a good fight card. Like, I can't believe they're kind of not pushing this more, right? Because you have, it depends on what happens at 155, right? But like, you have this interim belt at 145. So even if Volkanovski loses to Islam, he's probably going to go back to 145 and fight the winner of this fight. And these are two of the top contenders, I think, in the division right now. No, undoubtedly they are, obviously, right? There's arguments for Cater. That fight that he had against Emmett was close. I don't know. But these feel like the two guys at the top right now. And it's an interesting stylistic matchup because Josh Emmett has that really aggressive style where he kind of like, he moves his way in and he's boxing his way in with big explosive movements. He can wrestle a little bit. I think he's going to have an advantage in that department against Yair. Yair is crafty, though, and he's long and he's exciting, and he definitely has an edge in the creativity department. The question is going to be, again, similarly, is Yair going to be able to keep Emmett off of him, right? Yair has some of, if you look, I mean, like, I know that the fight ended anticlimactically, right, against Brian Ortega, but if you look at that bout, he was fucking stinging Ortega with some nasty shots, and he is sharp. He is very sharp, and you know when guys are sharp, they're powerful, right? He has a good jiu-jitsu game from his back. He gets his hips going and stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, early on in his career, he lost to like Frankie Edgar, but you got to think that he's made advances since then. Like I said, super creative. This is a tough one. I think if Yair can keep Emmett off of him, I think he's going to win because he's going to be able to, like I said, he's going to have a big advantage in that striking department. I think he's going to be able to sting Emmett from places that Emmett A isn't expecting, and B where Emmett can't reach him, obviously. Yair's going to have a big reach advantage in this fight, and that is important. But if Josh can just kind of bully Yair around again, this is kind of a similar style fight to what we talked about in this previous matchup with Madalena and Randy Brown. I think that Emmett has to bully Yair around and keep him behind the black line, move him up against the cage, initiate a lot of grappling where he's going to be stronger, and probably is going to be able to at least get the fight to the ground repeatedly, right? If he can start doing that, and I think his path to victory is not standing and banging with Yair, it's moving him backwards, taking him down, and making him work the entire fight and turning it into a dogfight. Because that explosiveness and that creativity, it's not quite so, I mean, fuck. But you say that and then look at the Korean Zombie and that up elbow that he hit. Or that like, boom. You know what I mean? I was there for that in Denver. It was in Denver. Me and my buddies went. It was fucking insane. 1 second left. Boom. Hits him with that elbow. But so he does have those moves left late, but the likelihood of them being available to him and that they're executed correctly late in a fight if you just tired him out are lower, right? Possible, but lower. Fuck, man. I don't know. I kind of like Emmett's style against Yair. I think Yair is going to be able to tag Emmett with some things, and he could definitely finish him, man. I mean, if he starts putting Emmett, if he starts holding him and making him kind of look like he's in mud and he can't move in and that explosiveness is taken away because he's getting tagged every time he does try to enter and he doesn't know how to deal with the problem, you could see that. I could see the fight playing out this way. Man, I think I'm going to take Emmett. He's like a plus 160 underdog in this. I think he's worth like a decent sized bet, right? Like I'll probably put like 1.5 units, 2 units on him. I think he has an interesting style where he might be able to pressure forward and punch his way in to grappling exchanges against the cage. And the goal maybe isn't to ground and pound finish him or like exert yourself. It's to wear on Yair over the course of the fight. And like I said, take away some of those more explosive and creative options. Take away the likelihood that those land successfully. I think I like Emmett in this fight, man. I do. I think, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Yair wins. If he starts holding the range, he's got it, man. It's going to be tough for Josh Emmett to be able to enter and ever put him in situations like that. But Yair, if he can hold that range and start getting the striking going, it could be a long night for Emmett. We'll see. I think Emmett might be able to overcome it, but it's a fucking close fight. This is a great fight. So, yeah, guys, great card. I wanted to break the fights down first, and then I do want to take a couple minutes to talk about Fedor retiring. And I also want to talk about like Conor and Chandler coaching the Ultimate Fighter. But first, Fedor. Man, undoubtedly, first off, one of the greatest mixed martial artists that's ever lived. And maybe, arguably, the greatest heavyweight ever. The argument for that one is up for debate. I think it's tough. But regardless, he is one of the greatest heavyweights ever. And you always hear Dana White say, he lost to middleweight Dan Henderson. Like, he got knocked out by middleweight Dan Henderson. I've never considered Fedor one of the greatest. And you got to think that's because Dana has some sort of bias because Fedor never fought in the UFC. And Dana has never, ever, ever been somebody to talk favorably about other organizations in almost any capacity, right? And he's fighting for Bellator now, who you know Dana White isn't a fucking fan of. So he's not going to say anything positive about him. But that statement is kind of ridiculous because what I think about when I think about Fedor is the fact that he was an undersized heavyweight doing what he did for so long, right? He was 6-0 against like UFC champions or UFC interim champions or something like that combined. Granted, a lot of those guys were out of their prime, but man, if you look at his fights, he was undersized and he still found a way to win. And he was very well-rounded. He had 15 knockouts, I think, and like 16 submissions. It was something very close like that, right? Only lost 7 fights in his entire career. Man. And 3 of those, towards the end here in Bellator, or 2 of them where he lost to Bader. And I was thinking about this. That fight, normally I would have a problem with it, but you do seem to have a little bit of a longer lifespan in the heavyweight division. And what else are you going to send him out with in Bellator? What else is more like, how better could you, I can't even think of what I want to say. Like, how better could you like represent Fedor, you know what I mean, than a title fight? Like, it has to be against somebody like Bader, I think. And you know that the odds of him pulling it off are next to none, honestly, if you're being critical of it. But at least you give him that chance at glory on his way out, right? If it was the UFC, I don't know if you want to see him fight like Ngannou, right? Like, if that's not what I'm saying. But the Bader one, it's like you kind of know he's going to get run through, but let him go out on a shield a little bit. That's not going to change how you feel about the rest of Fedor's career, in my opinion, right? I mean, like I said, I think he's one of the best ever, and I think the criticisms by Dana about him getting knocked out by middleweight Dan Henderson, it's like, so what? Fedor was undersized, and Dan Henderson had fucking massive power in his right hand. What are you going to do? It happens. It happens. If Dan Henderson catches a lot of people, they're going to go to sleep. Dan Henderson catches Parker Porter back. Dan Henderson in his prime catches Parker Porter, he's probably going to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, I don't know. But I think that Fedor, undoubtedly, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. I don't personally consider him the greatest. I do think that title probably belongs to, there's arguments for Verdum. I think you do, it's unfortunate, but you do have to fight in the UFC, in my opinion. You just have to. You have to fight against the best guys in their prime. I think the best heavyweight might be Stipe. It's Stipe or Fabricio for me. Cain Velasquez, if he could have stayed healthy, probably would have been. But I think it's Fabricio or Stipe. That's just my thoughts on the situation. But anyway, Fedor, one of the greatest mixed martial artists overall of all time, and probably like top 3 for me though. Like it's Stipe, it's like Stipe, Verdum, and then probably Fedor thrown in that mix somewhere. I feel like Ngannou's just got a little bit more to do. I don't know why. But and who knows what's going on with him now. But anyway, let's talk about Chandler versus Conor on this new upcoming TUF season. I think this is the best thing that the UFC could have done with Conor, right? I didn't want to see Conor fight Tony. I think he would have busted Tony up, if I'm being honest. Like, you got to remember, he's 34, and I know he's not. Also, I'm like a Conor fan. I don't like the shit that he's been doing lately. I don't like how he acts outside of it. But on his way up, man, when he was calling like Dustin Poirier a P-head and the way he was knocking people out, like he was fun. And I still think he's extremely talented. He's just tried to like overhaul his style and gotten away from what got him to the dance. Those are the things that like make you nervous. But have you ever seen that video of Tony Ferguson where he's sliding like back and forth? He's doing his knee cuts. They show him over time. Like when he first came into the UFC, he's like, warming up before the fights and slicing from side to side, like hitting his takedowns, like, or whatever he's doing when he warms up. Like, his knee, like, gives out on him in a thing that they did recently. And it's like, man, he's just not the same person. Chandler, however, though, if you follow him on social media, is somebody who takes really good care of his body constantly. He's incredibly explosive. He puts a lot of emphasis on recovery. And there's not, but dude, Tony, people forget too, like I know Chandler knocked Tony out, but Tony was kind of busting Chandler up in that first round, And I guess I feel like Tony, like, I don't know. I feel like Conor wins this fight. If he comes prepared and does everything he needs to do, I think it's a winnable fight for Conor. Like I said, I'm a Conor like sympathizer, I guess. I always think he's going to win or has a chance. But he kind of gives you that impression, right? And if you look, man, like I said, he like overhauled his style in the fight against Poirier. He came out in that weird stance. But when Conor was knocking out Aldo, right? When Conor was like that Conor, when he did knock out Poirier, he was a different fucking animal, man. And he was super technical. Like, I think that version of Conor fucking like would annihilate Chandler. Chandler always has that explosiveness and the chance to crack you with big shots, but like the people who explode like that are the people that tend to get caught with people whose style mimics Conor's, right? Like he's very, like I said, he comes straight down the pipe, but man, this whole boxing thing, the stance difference that he came out with against Poirier, it's changed things a little bit, and his time away from the octagon certainly makes this a more favorable matchup for Chandler because, like I said, Conor's tried to overhaul his style so many times, and I just think that, like, overall this is a really good matchup. Both guys have a really good chance to beat each other at this point in their careers, and it's going to be so much better TV to watch Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor as opposed to Tony Ferguson. Tony's weird, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a Tony Ferguson fan. When Tony Ferguson was coming up, when he put it on RDA, when he was like fucking one of the best lightweights in the world, he was terrifying. And he's an excellent fighter. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's weird, right? He's different. And I don't think it would have made good TV. I think it would have just been Conor destroying Tony in terms of like the insults and stuff. And Tony never really being able to rebuttal with anything that like led to more exchanges, right? It would just kind of be Tony saying weird stuff and Conor being like, what the fuck, and saying whatever he wants. But Chandler is really good on the mic, right? Like the Ric Flair impersonation he did. He's good on the mic, and it's going to make for good TV. I think it's going to be a really entertaining season, and it's going to create a lot of build up to the fight. That fight, when it happens, is going to be fucking massive. I wouldn't be surprised if it does like incredible pay-per-view numbers, because I think there's going to be, like I said, just a lot of back and forth on the show, and it's going to be really fucking good television, right? Both guys are really entertaining. They're really good on the mic. And they're going to be going back and forth at each other. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the whole thing. But, yeah, crazy matchup against two of the most exciting fighters. And fucking, I mean, Chandler's been here much shorter than Conor. But in UFC history, Chandler's fucking exciting, man. But anyway, all right. I'm going to wrap this one up, guys. Enjoy the fights this evening. I'm pumped for them. Also, Eagles, obviously, in the Super Bowl tomorrow. It's a big weekend. I'm on call. I'm surprised I didn't get called while I was recording this. I was worried I might. But kind of glued to the fucking house this weekend, but been swamped all week. But I wanted to get this out before the fights at least and just kind of talk about everything. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Much love. Enjoy the fights. Bye-bye.